Well, I think it is more than fair to say that as individuals and even as a society, we are captivated by or even fueled by this concept of fear. Right? We watch horror movies for some reason, or any of the latest drama that you enjoy watching. All of those have to do with situations where we are put into this moment of fear. And we watch and we see how our favorite characters are going to work through it. We watch fear. We read about fear. It is all around us. We seem to have some sort of temptation to it. The best example of this that I can think of is this TV reality show that came out in 2001 called Fear Factor. Anybody want to admit that they actually watched it? I will raise my hand. Thank you for you brave souls who are also raising yours now too. Yeah, the show came out in 2001, but since then it's never really gone away. It's been rebooted in a number of different ways with different hosts and everything. But the point of the show is to really put contestants in the path of some sort of primal fear that they might have, and then for that contestant to decide if they're going to accept the situation or if they're going to say no thank you and walk away. And apparently, I think the point of the show was really to watch with them and see if they were able to control this fear that they had, if they were able to overcome it in some way. That, along with the money, of course, because it's a TV reality show and there's always money that you're trying to win, of course. But the show literally put people into these positions where their most primal fears would kick in, both physical and psychological. So sometimes they would have to eat bizarre foods or perform stunts at really high heights. Sometimes they would interact with creepy bugs or animals, or anything else that you want to fill in the blank for that you think could be quite scary. And essentially, they were really trying to see how far they could go before breaking a person. Now that is some sort of strange fascination with fear, both for the contestants who applied to be on the show and for those of us who tuned into it every week. Now, I'm using the word fear in these sentences as we're talking. The show uses the word fear. But I think it's important for us to recognize that there is a difference between being scared and fear. A lot of times we use them interchangeably in our language, but there is a difference between the two, and recognizing this difference will help us as we look at this passage from Romans today. So being scared is an emotion. It is a feeling. It's that physical and psychological response that we have, that reaction, when we are confronted with something that we are instinctively, perhaps subconsciously, recognizing as dangerous. It could be heights or snakes or flying. It could be any of those things, or it could be those really big things in our world, or even the internal things like, am I good enough for my own perception or for the perception of others? Whatever it is, being scared is, in fact, essential to our lives. It's what keeps us from doing really stupid stuff, things that might endanger us in some way. But fear is completely different. Fear is what happens when we allow the things that we are scared of to take control of our minds, to give us the reactions that we go into the world with, both in our thoughts and our actions. And essentially, fear really is an illusion because it is this concept that we stir up, we manufacture in our minds, and it is dangerous to us because it dictates how we live in the world. The choices that we make, the thoughts that we have, the actions that come along with that, and it keeps us trapped within whatever that thing is that causes us to be scared. And we proclaim that we are free because of the actions of Jesus Christ. Are we really free, though, if we are always trapped and driven by fear? So take just a quick moment. I don't want you to go too far, but think about the things that cause your heart to race, the things that you might instinctively shudder away from or avoid at any cost. Those are the things that you are scared of. But what if we looked at what lies underneath that emotion of being scared? What is it that drives you to be scared? Why does that thing trigger whatever it is within you? Well, I'll help you out a bit. Each one of those things is something that we perceive will cause us suffering. That is what fear truly is. Fear is this thought that we are going to suffer. And that means that we are thinking about us. We are looking inward. Fear is selfish in that it drives us out of a self-idolization rather than being able to focus on what we know God has called us to, which is looking outside of ourselves first, looking to the needs of others. Fear traps us in this illusion that whatever it is we might suffer, we might hurt in some way, and we will do everything we possibly can to avoid suffering. Now, it's this essence of being trapped by suffering that Paul is talking about in his passage, in the passage that we read today from this letter to the Romans. Now, remember that these people he is writing to are newly Christian converts. They are Jewish individuals who now see that Christ was the Son of God and see all that he had done for them. And so the first 7 verses of Paul's letter to the Romans is really having them look backwards at their past. He's asking them to see how it is that Jesus has fulfilled all of the prophets, all of the promises that we have heard of in all of their time as the Jewish people. And he's looking at how the Spirit has been moving within them since the very beginning of time. But in this chapter, chapter 8, we start into a new piece, a new part of this letter in which Paul is really urging them to look at how you are living today. It's all about the present time. And if there is one thing that Paul writes about in all of his letters more than anything else, it's that living a life of faith actually changes what we do on a daily basis. So, we hear him say in chapter 8, verses 14 and 15, "We are debtors, not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are children of God." He lays out for us here 2 options, living in the flesh or living by the Spirit. But know that these aren't 2 options that we make kind of like the 2 sides of a coin, not deciding when we're confronted with different sorts of circumstances. But these are actually 2 completely different orientations to the world itself, 2 different ways that we live. And the flesh is what is set against God. It's what causes this dysfunction in our relationship with God. We live by the flesh when we rebel against God's will and desire for us. That happens when we allow fear to dictate how we act in the world, when we allow fear to tell us that we should be looking at our own suffering first. The Spirit, though, that is living in the flesh. Living in the Spirit, though, that is when we live with God. That is where our right relationship with God is returned. This is living into life where we have been set free from ourselves, really, From that need to look inward all the time out of worry for ourselves, we are set free by living in the Spirit as we are trusting in God, our Creator, once again. We can think of it as living in the Spirit is when we have this relationship with God of a loving child to a loving parent. And living in the flesh is when that child rebels against the parent. Now, we know that the world will tell us that it is not possible for us to live in this way. The world will continue to highlight for us the suffering that exists throughout the world and will continue to tell us and drive us by making us think that we too will suffer in some grave way. We will continually be tempted to give into this sin that happens where we look inward only and not out into the world. Now, it is okay to be scared. There are lots of really good reasons in this world to be scared, and that is natural. The problem comes when we allow being scared to turn into the fear that dictates how we act and respond to the world around us. But Paul is reminding us here that we really have been set free from the enslaving nature of the self. As he writes, we have not received the spirit of the world, we have received the very Spirit of God himself. Our lives have been fundamentally changed by the suffering of Jesus Christ. Not our suffering, the suffering of Jesus Christ. And this isn't just some mere shift, it is a complete change in understanding who we are and who we are to the world. This transformation happens when we are able to move from fear to trust. When we move from living in the flesh to living in the Spirit, from rebellion to obedience, from enemy to beloved child. This is the transformation we have received when we move from death to life. And for this we say, thanks be to God. Amen.